And we're live.
Okay. Welcome everyone to our first cyber event at Ubeli. How secure are you online? I want to say welcome to Charlene Brown, who's a lawyer and founder of Hallett Brown. And Charlene will be talking about the importance of GDPR and Brexit. Is there any Brexit implications? Nicola Harris from the Integrate Agency, CIC, she'll do a presentation on the practical basic cyber hygiene. And there'll be a Q&A after, and it's going to be a very interesting and informative evening. My name is Yvonne Witter, and I'm going to set the context for the event and then invite our first speaker to talk. So you're probably wondering why we're having this cyber event. I'm going to share some information with you about the industry. UK businesses have lost over 6.2 million to cyber scams over the past year, with a 31% increase in cases during the height of the pandemic, during May to June. New research shows police data analyzed by cybersecurity company Nexor reveals how 3,445 UK businesses fell victim to cyber scams during the period September 2019 to September 2020. Of those cases, 1,740 were reported since lockdown was in force. The most common type of attack was hacking through email or social media, which accounted for 53% of attacks over the year, leading to a loss of 2.9 million. Scams caused by hacking of computer servers was revealed as the second most common type of attack on businesses over the 12-month period. London led the way with a loss of 308 and 308,338 pounds. Outside of London, the West Midlands took a huge blow with a loss of 133,461, followed by Southeast and Southwest. So the last 6 months have opened up many opportunities for malicious hackers to intercept individuals and businesses, as we have been thrown out of our usual routines and away from reliable systems. Across the country, millions of people switched to work from home, and for many businesses, this left the door open as cybersecurity took a back seat with such short notice, with the extent of the issue across the country detailed in a recent report. Sarah Knowles, senior security consultant at Nexor, said, "It's important that when we either transition back to our workplaces or indeed permanently adopt a more remote approach to working, that we don't allow these types of attacks to once again affect our businesses. This comes down to ensuring we invest in staff awareness training so they are vigilant to suspicious emails, calls, or texts, and that the correct reporting processes are followed." So this I'm reading to you is taken from Security Magazine, October 2020. So I'm just sharing with you the context for this event and what's actually happening, in case you don't know already. Europol 2020 cybercrime report updates on the latest trends and the current impact of cybercrime within the EU and beyond. So you can always Google Europol and have a read. But they report that so much has changed since Europol published last year's Internet Organized Crime Threat Assessment. The global COVID-19 pandemic that hit every corner of the world forced us to reimagine our societies and reinvent the way we work and live. During the lockdown, we turned to the internet for a sense of normality, shopping, working, and learning online at a scale never seen before. It is in this new normal that Europol publishes its 7th annual report. The report seeks to map the cybercrime threat landscape and understand how law enforcement responds to it. Although the COVID-19 crisis showed us how criminals actively take advantage of society at its most vulnerable, this opportunistic behavior of criminals should not overshadow the overall threat landscape. In many cases, COVID-19 has enhanced existing problems. which is not too different from how COVID-19 has enhanced problems in the health service. It seems to be COVID, the fact that we have COVID has enhanced so many things all over the world that weren't all that great in the first place. I want to thank Yvonne Field, the CEO of the Ubeli Initiative, the CEO and founder, in fact, for giving me the opportunity to host our first cyber event. I've been working with Ubeli for quite a while as one of the senior program managers, and we hope to do a series of events to bring people up to speed with the laws and regulations and everything else. I want to thank Tracy Durant, who is our techie person and the brains behind the brains behind putting this together. Really grateful to Tracy. Really grateful to Olivia Joseph, who's my wing lady today, and I'm grateful to Charlene Brown and Nicola Harris, who are our guests. I'm going to now introduce Charlene Brown, and thank her so much for being with us. Charlene Brown is the founder of Howlett Brown and has over a decade of legal and financial services experience. Charlene has providing strategic employment, law advice. Her expertise includes advising organizations and delivering training on GDPR. So we have an expert in the room tonight. No funny business here. So Charlene's an expert on cybersecurity law, corporate compliance, and governance. Charlene also specializes in internal investigations, data breaches, what's DNI, diversity and inclusion?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
And culture. So, you know, Charlene's a smart lady, and we are really grateful to have you here, Charlene. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Should I share my screen now? Should be good to go. Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for having me here today, and thank you Yvonne for a great introduction. Everything that Yvonne said earlier about the importance of cyber security, being more aware of your cyber risks, your responsibilities, whether you work for an organization or you run your own organization, is really, really true. There are many, many issues that can come from the advancement of technology, the way we work. And you were quite right in your comment about COVID, because that forced us all to work in a way that was completely different to what we were used to in the past. And now all of a sudden, everybody's working very differently. Everyone's signing on to their home Wi-Fi or free Wi-Fi. And with all of that then comes greater consequences, particularly if you're not set up in the right way. So what I want to speak to you about right now is the importance of GDPR, talking about the principles, why it exists, what it's supposed to do, what are the rights for people. I hope you don't know all too much about this, or it won't be boring for you. If you do know, it's certainly just a kind of a refresher discussion. And I'm aiming this essentially if you are an employee and work at an organization, or if you run your own organization and collect data. You know, this is something that you really need to know about and be aware of, because the consequences can be quite painful and nobody wants anyone to go through any of that. So let me just kickstart this slideshow now. Excellent. So what is the GDPR? So the GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation, and it came into place on the 25th of May 2018. It was a European-wide regulation, and it replaced our previous laws, certainly here in the UK, which was the Data Protection Act in 1998. And it was a real turning point in terms of privacy law in this country and across Europe, because it placed far greater obligations on organizations on how they needed to handle personal data. And we'll get into in a couple of moments what we mean by personal data. Now, the rules here, and we'll get on to Brexit and what's changed, but the principles remain the same. So I'm going to go through those and then explain the nuances from Brexit. But essentially, the GDPR, the rules that derive from it, apply to any processor or a controller of personal data who's in the UK or the EU, or processes and controls data that is here in the UK or in the EU. And that a processor could be you providing services to another organization. Let's say you are a third-party supplier to a charity. you could be providing services to that charity. You technically could be a processor in that regard. The charity might well be the controller. They kind of own and retain control of the data, but you might process it for them in the way in which you deliver your services. And businesses that are outside of the EU, the UK or the EU are still caught by these processes if you are offering goods and services here. So we see, just to give you another example, we see a lot of coaches around the world that provide, coaching services to people globally. Even though they might be in the US or another country, they might well be in Australia, for example. The fact that they are supplying services to someone here in the UK or in the EU means that they have to also apply to these rules too. So why is it important? It's important because of everything that Yvonne just said, but also because these rules now have a far wider reach and scope than they used to previously. And the consequences of getting this wrong can be very, very problematic for business owners and employers generally. So the ICO in the UK, the Information Commissioner, is the regulatory body here. So that kind of sets the tone, rules, enforcement action against the GDPR law for people who don't kind of follow the rules as much as they should. They have investigative powers. They can do audits on your business. They can access personal data, and if there's been a suspected breach, they can also make you correct your mistakes, and they can send you warnings and reprimands. So a lot of control there. And then they can place limitations on how you process data. And if we think about it, depending on the nature of your business, how you process data could well be part of the commercial reasons you set yourself up in that way. And that can be quite challenging. And they can also fine you, which is not the best in terms of the size of fines that is certainly happening. This is always in review, but certainly the average, the rule of thumb seems to be that they can impose administrative fines, and it can be up to 4% of a global turnover or 20 million euros, whichever is higher. So huge, huge fines that, depending on the business you are, the nature of the work you do, can be hugely detrimental. As the introduction said, I run my own business, so making sure my organization is protected and it's secure from a cyber and privacy perspective is really, really important, because the work that I do involves a lot of people dealing with internal investigations, advisory work. It all points to people. So I could, in some regards, end up having quite a lot of personal data, processing it for clients or having access to it. And so because of that, I need to be super careful that I make sure that I have the right infrastructure in place, because for a business like mine, a fine like this would be a very big problem. So I want to talk for a moment about definitions too, just to kind of set the scene. So when you hear about the GDPR, or you're looking at it for your own business or the organization you're a part of, you'll see terms such as that are listed on this slide. And I just want to cover those very, very briefly so you understand what comes next when we're talking about it. So when you hear someone say data subject, they're actually referring to a person. It's a person whose personal data is being processed. So Charlene Brown may well be the data subject of a previous employer because I worked there, so they had my data. And personal data can be far more many categories of items than you think it can be. So things like your name, your email address, your mobile phone number, an ID number, location data, anything that identifies you as an individual or the person you're processing the data, anything that identifies them could be classed as personal data. A controller, as I said before, is kind of an organization who sets the scene around what information needs to be processed and why. And a processor often is the third-party supplier or somebody who is connected to that controller to process the data. And when we talk about processing, we mean everything from collecting, storing, saving, changing, retrieving, sharing, anything of that nature is classed as processing. Just very quickly here as well, there's some examples of personal data. So if you look, you can see the top line, that is highlighting a person's name, last name, gender, age, and location. Collectively, that absolutely shares a lot of personal data. When you look at the bottom line, there is only 3 identifiers there. Now, on the face of it, that doesn't look like it's really sharing much personal data, but it really depends on in which context this list is being used. If it's something that you can identify individuals for, like internally, let's say it's relating to a team. If there's only one 23-year-old in that team, then it's quite clear who that data is relating to. So we've got to think about this. What do we need to store? How do we need to store it? And is it relevant for what we need it to do? I don't want to talk for too long on the key principles because I want to make sure we've got enough time to really just answer any questions that you want. But essentially, the GDPR is based on a number of key principles that we all have to follow. And that's making sure that you lawfully and fairly and openly process data. And so whatever you do, your organizations absolutely need to have privacy notices. You need to be able to say in those privacy notices, this is what we do, this is why we do it, and this is who we do it for. Anything that kind of goes beyond that or isn't clear enough is not helpful, and it certainly doesn't meet this key principle. Another key principle is limitation of purpose. We're expected under the principles of GDPR to only process data that is absolutely necessary. Don't add nice to have data if you don't need it. You know, what do you really need to do and why do you need to do it? Kind of getting back to those core questions. Data minimization is making sure that you only process information that is relevant to the purpose that you need it for. So if I am dealing with a client, I need to process some personal information about the client. If I only need their name, why am I asking for their address, as an example? The data that we have, which is another key principle, has to be accurate and has to be kept up to date. And it only needs to be, and it has to be stored for only as long as necessary. So, you know, you can't keep this data forever. What do you need it for? And that's particularly challenging when we get into the views of mailing lists, because, you know, if you're mailing lists, for example, if you're engaging with people through blogging and things like that, if you're seeing from your data that people aren't engaging and they're not checking their emails or the blogs that you send them, then you've got to ask yourself, from this perspective of limitation storage, how long should you hold on to that information for? And if no one's opened an email after a year, is it really necessary to keep that information any longer? We've got to make sure that the way we process has integrity and it's confidential, and there's an expectation in terms of how we do that through security. We've got to make sure that the level of protection is important. So, you know, when we're using cloud-based storage systems, and I know that might be covered later, we've got to make sure that it follows the principles we need it to in order to make sure that we're abiding by the various rules. And also just noting kind of the use of SSL certificates. I don't know if you know, but I think Google now when you search for websites, if your website isn't secure, it will make a note of it and say, you know, not secure. So SSL certificates provide an additional layer of security that are needed. Accountability, you've got to make sure as well, if you're a controller of information or a processor, that you're responsible and you're very clear of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you're engaging with customers in the right way in doing so. For a very brief moment, I want to just cover consent. And this applies particularly when it comes to like mailing lists and people subscribing to information, whether it's on your website or in other forms. Consent under these rules has to be freely given. There can't be a tick box that's already ticked. They have to be clear guidelines around how they're giving their consent and what it means. And they need to be allowed to withdraw their consent at any time. A little anecdote here, I accidentally subscribed somehow to this kind of influencer / global coach. He's everywhere. He does like lots of different coaching courses in the US, and I accidentally found myself on one of his subscription lists. I tried to unsubscribe to that list, I'm not kidding, at least 30 times, and I got nowhere. I kept getting 10 emails a day. It was really frustrating. So I ended up emailing their email address and just told them that they're in breach of these rules, and if they do not remove my email from their mailing list right now and cease sending me any more emails, I'll be complaining to the Information Commissioner. I was probably the wrong person that they should have done that to be honest, but this is what I mean. I didn't give my consent in that manner, and when I tried to withdraw it, they didn't listen. So this is important, why this is there too. So just covering a bit more on the subscription, it's just highlighting what I said. You absolutely have to make sure that if you're having something on your website, that the tick box is not ticked. Someone has to actively tick the box to consent to complying with GDPR, and make sure as well, if you are collecting information in this way, even if it's on a form base, make sure that you are keeping evidence of people complying, saying that they consent to you holding their data, which is aligned to your privacy policy. And just from a practice standpoint, if you have privacy policies, they should be on your website. If you're filling out forms, a copy of a privacy policy should be available to the people who are filling out forms. Whatever manner that you're collecting data, think practically, how do I make sure I show the person whose information I'm taking that I'm doing this in a certain manner? How can I show my privacy policy at the same time as collecting this information? So just for a few moments on what rights people have as data subjects. And this could be your clients, your consumers, it could be you if you're an employee. And so just to kind of briefly cover those, we as data subjects, in whatever guise we are, we have right of access to our information. We have the right to object to people processing that information, like I did, to that influencer. We have the right to object to direct marketing. We can say, I don't want you to contact me. I did it today. I got a phone call randomly, someone saying, I just wanted to ask you a few questions about your life insurance. And I was like, who is this? How did you get my number? I don't have life insurance. And then they continued to say, well, do you have kids? Do you have this? I'm like, I don't know who you are, and I'm really not comfortable in sharing this information. Can you remove me from your list, please? Now, if I get another phone call again, I'm going to note down who was calling and why, and I will be telling them the same thing I told that influencer. Some people get hold of your information, which is the risk we're talking about, and they take steps to try and capitalize on that, which is not good. Other rights, what we can do, we can say, this data you have about us is incorrect, and you must correct it. So you could get that from a customer. This information you've got on your system about me is wrong. Can you please change it? We have to change it. We can, as data subjects, ask to be forgotten. This is to say, can you remove me from all of your systems? I don't want to exist. That can happen. There's a lot of tension around this particular right because it's almost impossible to achieve, particularly when there are laws around how long you have to store certain documents for. And I'm not talking about GDPR here. I'm talking about like retention. So if you run your own business and you've got employees, you're required for around 7 years after the date that they leave to hold their information on file. And it'll be certain information, it's not everything. But if someone asks you to be forgotten, it's pretty difficult for you to do that if you've got other rules that require you to keep that information. So sometimes there's a back and forth with people saying, look, we can remove you from this system and this system and that system, but we can't take you away from these things because we're legally required to keep them. You can say then also other rights are restricting processing. I don't mind you contacting me in this way for this type of service that you provide, but I don't want to be contacted for something else. We have a right to be informed about what's going on, what the legitimate interests are in terms of how people process our information. All of that should usually be captured in the privacy notice. And we have the right to ask for it to be given back. So how can you transfer this data to us? I want to see a copy of it, and can you send it over to me? Brexit, just very briefly. So does the GDPR still apply in the UK? So as we all know, we had the Brexit take place not too long ago. We're suffering from many things, and we're getting over COVID, and well, it's still going on, and also Brexit. And what does that mean for us? So certainly, because we are no longer part of the EU, the EU GDPR ceased to apply in the UK from the 1st of January this year. But what happened though was, as under the whole arrangement that took place with the UK exiting from the EU, the UK was allowed to incorporate pretty much all of the infrastructure and principles into UK law. So we now have a UK GDPR, for want of a better term. And what this means is very little has changed right now in terms of processes, and the principles absolutely still apply. So you should still be operating in that way. But there have been some amendments, mostly to just reflect that it's now UK law and not anything broader. But I do expect that there'll be some more changes as time goes on around data transfers and how all of those things occur and how they affect us in the UK. So it's more of a watching brief. There will be some changes, but for now, principally, all of the principles that applied in the EU GDPR apply in the UK version of it. The next question I've added here is, does the GDPR still apply if your business operates outside of the European Economic Area? Which was the principal region area that the EU GDPR started to apply. And the answer is, in short, yes. If your business operates in Europe and it offers goods and services to individuals in Europe, or you monitor behaviors of individuals in Europe, then the EU GDPR will apply. So if you're operating and you have customers here and you have customers in the EU, then you'll have to apply with both the UK GDPR and the EU GDPR too. For the moment, that doesn't seem to be too much of a problem because the principles are aligned, but there may come a time when they veer off or start to go off in different directions in terms of what principles and rules are required. So keep an eye on it, make sure that you're keeping on top of the rules as and when they come out. And just as a kind of note of caution, I think if we are service providers or if you are an employer, some of the things you need to be careful about is really just double checking your cloud storage systems, your third-party suppliers, really understand, what they're doing from a GDPR standpoint. Have they made sure that they're continuously reviewing and updating their policies, procedures to align with the principles of GDPR, and also what they're standing for and how they're processing information? Does that align to what you are doing for your customers, for your clients or your employees at the same time? So that's it from me for the presentation. I know we've got another presentation to follow, and then we've got some questions, but do keep them coming and we'll keep an eye on them and be able to respond to them once we get to the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'll turn off my
Charlene.
camera now. No problem. Thank you.
That was amazing. And if you visit Charlene's website, you'll know that she does what she says, because her website, is GDPR compliant. I went to her website. I was like, oh, this is what it's like when you're GDPR compliant.
Thank you.
I'd like to take the opportunity now to introduce Nicola Harris, who is our next speaker. And I've seen Nicola in action, and I know how good she is on her training. But she's done some a customized presentation for us tonight. But I know she can go into really technical stuff, and I begged her, please, Nicola, make it easy for people to understand, because I know she's seeped into this cyber stuff. Nicola Harris is the Chief Information Security Officer of the Integrate Agency, CIC. Integrate is a social enterprise that supports communities through world-class training, advocacy, and support services. Integrate is the CVS for the London Borough of Lambeth, and they manage a portfolio of fundraising and cybersecurity clients. Nicola Harris, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, Charlene, that was an excellent presentation, if I don't say so myself. It was so clear. And when Brexit is unclear, you still managed to bring the insight. So fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Yvonne, for the introduction. So I'm just going to crack on into it, because I guess we've got lots to cover. So as Yvonne has said, I work for the Integrate Agency. We are also a community interest company. So we do lots of work, contract, bid writing, brokering, and also information security. We work for lots of different organizations, and I will talk to you a little bit about the work that we do towards the end of the presentation. So you're all here today to really understand how to really keep your business safe. That's what we said, safe online. So as Yvonne quite rightly said, there are lots of threats that are there, lots of cyber attacks, and it's really an easy and new currency of data. So the kind of attacks that might take place, we're looking at ransomware attacks where they might keep your data and then ask you to pay a sum of money, whether it be in monetary form or Bitcoin cryptocurrency, to get your data back. There are lots of new attacks on Internet of Things. What this is devices that use internet. So for example, I have a Samsung washing machine that somehow can program to my telephone, so my mobile phone. Smart watches, smart fridges, these are Internet of Things, and these are also also privy to cyber threats. You might have some internal threats happening, which this comes from the employers. This might employees that you have. This might be done unwittingly. They might have done something that they don't know about, or it could be a malicious targeted threat that they have purposely thought about. But either way, whichever way we think about it, the hackers are in it for the long game. Okay, they know that there is money in this exploit. So why are they doing it? Well, you have what they want. What do they want? Your money, your authority, maybe your ownership, maybe information, or it could be documents that you have. Whatever it is that they find valuable and you find valuable, they want access to it too. But it also goes a little bit beyond just electronics. I mean, some hacks can happen quite silently with no victim involvement. You've got hacks to major bank and credit card companies, or you've got things like social engineering, where no one's actually had to use a computer to get to your data, but they've used your basic human instincts, and you as a person has become a victim just by participating unwittingly. So we're going to go through a few kind of cyber threats that might happen that you might or might not be aware of. So hopefully I'm not reiterating things that you already know. So the first thing is malware. So malware is a type of program there are various different types of malware that could offload onto your network, onto your computer or your device, and it could send information outside of your business. It could send it depends on what kind of malware we're talking about. If it is ransomware, that ransomware may take your information, lock it away, and then ask for payment for it to be released. Okay. You might get some kind of cyber threats through patching or updates. So when your Microsoft Office says it's got an update that it wants to run, it looks quite good. It looks like what it's supposed to be, but actually it's a piece of malware. So we have to be careful when we are running updates, when we are looking for patches. We can go to websites, we can go to Microsoft and see what the latest patch is. They release a list of it, and just check and double check before we let this run on our devices and on our networks. Some cyber threats as I said, don't use very much computering at all. Social engineering, I could turn up at your workplace or sit in the cafe across the road, and then maybe when you've gone out of the building, look through your bin and see what information I can find. There can also be phishing attacks where I ring up and I say, I'm calling from head office, or I am calling from HMRC. I'm calling from anywhere that has some value, and I need to speak to this person. I need this information right now. a lot of the social engineering is actually happening through our emails. So we are getting emails that look very good, especially where we're in this environment where we're looking at our emails on our phones. We are not really taking in all the information because it's on a reduced screen. So you don't actually realize it actually looks really, really good. I had one 2 days ago that looked like it was from Netflix, saying that I hadn't paid my bill. And I know I always pay my Netflix bill, and it looked very, very good. It was a phishing email and trying to prompt me to click onto a link. So other kind of threats, we spoke about insider threats from your employees, that might be on purpose or not on purpose, as the case may be. And also cloud attacks from people that are trying to access your Dropbox, your OneDrive, or your Google Drive and things like that. Okay, now there are a few pictures around here. Shodan is a website that is really good at accessing things that are on the internet, so the Internet of Things devices. For example, you can go onto Shodan's website and have a look at webcams that are unsecure all over the world and just look at data. You can have a look and see if there is any kind of insecurity to your business by having a look at Shodan. OWASP, Open Web Application Security Project, is a, just clicked by accident, is a information service, open source information service, where it will list vulnerabilities to web applications. So they will go around hunting for the vulnerabilities and have a look, and you can just go in there and check the list as and when you need to. So, as always, sometimes we unwittingly help the criminals to steal our stuff. What do? Well, we have easy to guess passwords. I'm sure there are lots of us that have passwords that are affiliated with things that we are quite fond of. Friends' names, mothers' names, pet names, children names, things like that, dates of birth. Things that are really easy to guess. There was a video clip quite a while ago where a man went up to a high street and he was recording people and saying, look, tell me what your password is. And they said, no. Oh, what's the name of your pet dog? Oh, my pet dog's this. Oh, okay. Would you use that as your password? Yeah, I would. And he's got all the information in about 3 questions. Okay. So sometimes we might have we might give away our stuff or help the criminals because we feel that we're doing the right thing. We feel like we're following an instruction. It looks legitimate. It looks like something that the police would have said, or at some kind of government institution or your bank, and we unwittingly go through the steps, not realizing that this is a cyber attack. Sometimes we open unknown email attachments. Sometimes we open attachments that come from people that we do know. And we think, okay, this is genuine. I always get an email from Yvonne. She's attached something. This looks good. I'm going to click it and open it. And the malware is stored onto my device and onto my network. Sometimes you might find a USB stick. Now, this is something that was used quite a few years ago, and lots of businesses have updated to now not use external drives for storage, so USB or external drives, but they might load a malware onto the USB stick. They leave it in a place where you're going to find it. What's the first thing you want to find out is, who does this belong to? Okay, the only way to find out who it belongs to is to plug it in, and you plug it in, and the malware is then offloaded onto your device or your network. So these are just a few ways that we can unwittingly help the cyber criminals to get our data. So let's see, I suppose in the chat, are you password popular? Actually, in the chat, please don't. I was joking. So, are you password popular? Well, according to the National Cybersecurity Centre, these are the top 5 passwords in the UK. Okay, they take less than a second to crack. of 2020, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is someone still thinking that QWERTY across the top of the keyboard is a safe password to keep. Okay, somebody's putting password 1, 2, 3. Okay, one of the ways to get around this is to make sure that you really have a strong password. And we'll talk about how we can strengthen passwords in a few slides. Sometimes your passwords might be to do with, as I said before, about your children's names, your pets, things like that. What your affinity passwords to do with things that you enjoy. So if I have a picture built up of you, and if you know me, you know that I'm a Liverpool supporter, then you might think, oh, let's just guess that. Let's guess Anfield. Let's just guess Mo Salah. That's as an idea of what your password might be. Okay. So the last bit then, the following instructions, your account's being hacked. In the chat, actually, I'm going to have a look in the chat because I can't see it at the moment. But in the chat, have you had an email that says your account's been hacked, you need to do this, or we need you to do this, you need to verify this account? Just let me know in the chat if you've had something like that come through to your email, or I actually can't see the chat anymore. There we go. Yes, definitely. Thank you. Yeah. So those kind of things, that's what I mean about following instructions. When we naturally want to do the right thing and you see this, oh no, I've got to go and do this, and you click on it without thinking. Just take the time to think, check it out, have a look. Is it really legitimate? So how could you tell if an email is really coming from the person that you think it's coming from? A lot of the time, if you look at the top of the email, you might look just for grammatical errors. For example, there might be spelling mistakes. There might be a slight tweak in the design of the logo for Netflix, for example, the email that I had the other day. But one thing which using your emails on your phone is to try and open out your emails fully so that you can see the header information of who's sending it to you. So when you open it up on Outlook or Gmail, sometimes you can only just see the name. But if you click on the name, then it gives you the full information. And usually that address that this email is coming from does not look like anything legitimate. It's gobbledygook letters, or it's someone's name. It's random words that address has sent to you, and you can tell that this email is not legitimate. So try to stay away from unknown email attachments, special prizes, draws, last chance to do that. Just when in doubt, just don't click it. Okay. Now, sometimes you can have an email or a site address that has been disguised. Now, if you feel that you might have, or want to find out if you have been in a cyber, if you've been in a threat, if you've been hacked, you can go to this website, haveibeenpawned.com, and that is a intentional spelling error. And when you go to that website, and it is a very trustworthy website, so I know you probably think when you get there, but when you go to that website, if you type in your email address, you can see how many hackings that your email address has been associated with. So for example, when LinkedIn was hacked quite a few years ago, my email address was associated with that breach. And it's really good to have a look and see what breach your address might have been associated with, and also what has been done about it. Okay, but try and stay away from email addresses that don't look correct. So be aware of change. If they've asked you for a change of your address, change of bank details, change of payment details, always second question, what is this change about? So let's go through some social engineering techniques. So we did talk about the USB device drop, dumpster diving, where they can go through your rubbish can and find any information of value. But there were a few other techniques that we didn't discuss. So for example, you can look at tailgating. I know lots of us are working from home at the moment, but when we do go back into our buildings or premises, you may find that there are people that have joined the business during this whole pandemic that you don't know, and they've come up to the building, or they might say they've come up to the say that they've joined the business, and they're just saying, well, I don't have a pass, can you let me in? Or hold the door, can you hold the door? And they've gained access to your building. Be aware of shoulder surfing. If you are a person that likes to go and work out in a coffee shop or any kind of public environment, it's really easy just to have a look over your screen and have a look and see what's happening. And there are things that you can use to protect it. So you can get a film that can go across your screen, which is a polarizing film, which stops you from being able to see the device's screen from any other angle other than dead on. So unless you are sitting directly in front of the laptop or whatever the device's screen is, you cannot look over someone's shoulder and see what they are seeing on their screen. So this is a really cheap and easy method to just protect yourself from social engineering. So a little bit like what Charlene was saying about the whole idea of us moving to working from home. I thought it would be really important to have a look at mobile devices, because I'm certain that lots of us are using some sort of mobile device. We might be using our mobile phones, laptops, tablets, and we are using them from our home. Now, if you are a business that is quite a large business, maybe you are providing devices for your employees, or maybe you are asking them to bring their own device. That's what BYOD policies means. So you need to think about if you are allowing your employees to use their own devices, how can you secure those devices when they are working for you? Okay, so we're going to look at a few things. There we go. So firstly, the advantages and disadvantages of those bring your own device policies. Well, great stuff that it's familiar to the person. The person knows how to use the device. And also it doesn't incur you any cost for you to buy the device for them. They already have a laptop. Why are you going to go and buy a laptop to go and give them to work? However, the risks are that you don't know what their connections are like. TLD is theft, loss, destruction. So you're not sure how you're going to, it's really hard to protect them against theft, against loss and destruction of the device. And also the fact that lots of social engineering exploitations could take place. So there are, just as we had cyber threats for your network, there are cyber threats that are attached specifically to your mobile devices. So the first one is a fake access point or SSID. So I know that everyone said not to get too technical, but when it's not really that technical when you think about it. When you are connecting your device to a Wi-Fi router, you are connecting to what we call is an access point. Now, there are lots of times when an access point, it might come up. So, for example, my internet is from Shell. I know it's really weird that they do internet and broadband. When I go to connect and I look for Wi-Fi signal, it tells me this is Shell, blah, blah, blah. This is its name. This is my access point. Now, if you are out and about and you are mobile, because your device is mobile, so you can work anywhere, you may find there are times that you want to connect to access points that are not obviously in your home. So it might look like a really good access point to connect to, but it might not be legitimate. So there are fake access points and you have to be aware. Sometimes you may go out and you might want to access a Wi-Fi service that is produced by the actual environment that you're in. So for example, if I went to the train station or even better than that, the airport. If I went to Gatwick Airport, Gatwick has a Wi-Fi service that you can connect to. How do you connect to it? You connect to it through a captive portal. So in this picture is kind of a, you would have to go to the captive portal. So you try to connect to the Wi-Fi and it will say, okay, you need to make a username and a password and prove that you are who you are. And then we are going to allow you access to our Wi-Fi for 24 hours or whatever. So captive portals, they can be sometimes be faked. So you can have spoofed captive portals. So when you are connecting to internet or Wi-Fi that is in those kind of public environments, you have to be very careful. Sometimes you may be in a place and you might have you being knocked off the network, and then it will ask you to reconnect. And when you do reconnect to that network, actually you're reconnecting to a malicious network that it would like you to go through to. And lastly, in terms of threats, in terms of mobile devices, you can have an untrusted Android package kit. So for example, or even just in your iPhone, if you have a Play Store, all of the apps that are in the Play Store should have been verified and go through stringent checking through the Android's security team. But there are some times that you might want to download an app that is not in the Play Store and actually that the Android operating system doesn't recognize. So those are what we call untrusted applications. Sometimes you may feel that you want to get them. Sometimes they are actually a hacker's way into gaining access to your mobile phone. And remember, your mobile phone's got lots of data. It's got phone numbers, it's got photos, it's got your emails, it's got your maybe your banking details. So you need to be careful when using mobile devices. So methods then to detect and prevent cybersecurity when we're using our mobile devices or any devices, to be honest. So firstly, we look at the factors of authentication. So you need to make sure, if you can, to set up what we call multi-factor authentication. And a way of likening this to make it easy to understand is to think of our email addresses. So sometimes you can log in, you put your username, you place your password, and then it sends you a second authentication to another email address or to your mobile phone. Also, your banking apps will do that. So you go in, you log into your banking app, and then it sends a code through text message that you then need to place into the screen. So these are what we call multi-factor authentications. If you use Google Mail or Outlook, this is really easy. It's a one-step process to go into your settings and turn on multi-factor or two-factor authentication. Protecting your devices. Also, you could use your biometrics. Obviously, you are only you, so your fingerprint is yours. The only way it wouldn't really work is if you are identical twin and you are your facial recognition doesn't always quite work if you're an identical twin. However, twins have different fingerprints. So turning on and making sure that you enable the biometrics within your device. Making sure that everything is password protected. Now, I know I spoke about how I said I was going to say how to make your password stronger. One good way to make your password strong is to use 2 or 3 random words in your password. So you could use red, tree, pot, and capitalize some of the letters, maybe substitute some of the letters for numbers, but it is a random sequence of words. This is recommended by the National Cybersecurity Centre to strengthen passwords. Also, some people have use many of the same accounts, have the same password. You need to make sure that each account that you have has a different password. There's no point having a password onto a device and then as soon as I get in, I'm able to get to all your passwords for everything, because you have the same password for everything. So once that password is cracked, the only way the password can still protect you is if you have a different password for every account that you have. Sometimes you might see R captures, R recaptures come up on the slide on your attempt to authenticate. So these are when you have pictures and it says, oh, select the pictures that have a traffic light in it. And you select all the pictures that have got a traffic light in it. What that R capture is doing is notifying the computer that you are this is a human and not a piece of malware, not a bot that is inputting the information. So it actually is picking up where you are clicking the screen. Some of the newer versions, version 2, just has a box that says say that I am not a computer or something, and you click it and it comes up with a tick. It is also verifying a bot wouldn't be able to press and click that particular space. So it does know that you are human. If you have a website at Integrate, we can help you to build our captures and things like that into your websites if you need to authenticate clients into your networks. So making sure that you have also another way to prevent cyber threats is making sure that you turn on your automated or automatic software updates. It's quite easy to do. How often do we have a software update and we're in the middle of something and we say, oh, we're going to leave it till later? The reason that that software update is there is because there is a vulnerability that has been found. Somebody has found a way that a hacker could take advantage of that particular software. So you need to update it so that you can essentially patch the fault and then protect your device that's running the software. Okay, I hope that wasn't too technical, Yvonne. Okay, so as I said, just a recap. So the R capture, sorry, I couldn't put it on the other slide. So this is the R capture that I was talking about, where you just click it and it says I'm not a robot, or sometimes it has words, or sometimes it says pictures, and you can embed this into your websites to give your clients extra security. Okay, so there we go. So I think there's a few points that we can kind of think about when using those mobile devices. I'm talking about laptops, not just mobile phones, but we need to make sure that whenever we can, we repair whatever's wrong with it. We try and reuse devices. Try not to throw them away in the bin because they store lots of information. There are lots of businesses out there that can come and basically get rid of all the data for you on your device before you throw it out. Rethink your business plan. You might want to think about enabling bring your own device policy, making sure that your employees make sure that the biometrics is on, have strong passwords, enable it so that it can be located should it be lost or stolen, so that you can, it's always got the locator on there so you can try to find it, and also make sure that it is you're able to access it remotely if you need to wipe and clear all the data off should it be lost or stolen. Okay, so just a few things to think about. So mainly what I really wanted to concentrate on was practical tips. So here is your organization. Sometimes you put in on all these securities around your perimeter, but something always gets in, you know. If you're using a cloud service, then you've got to also think about how they are securing your data when you place your data into their hands. So you may be using Amazon Web Service, Azure, or maybe Office 365 packages in your organization. So what can you do? So what we're going to talk about is practical tips. Some of the things I've mentioned already, and some may take you into further thinking. Okay, so one of the very good best things to do is your weakest link is your employees. You need to train your employees to make sure that they know how to identify when something is possibly phishing for information, a phishing email or a phishing phone call, or what to do if there is a data breach, if they have downloaded a malicious software by accident. What is the process of handling that? You need to also make sure that you have that strong password policy, making sure that they've developed their passwords, but also that you are regularly updating your passwords, maybe not too frequently, because that can be counterproductive. If you're asking your employees to update their password every month, what they're going to do is the most unsecure thing is write it down. So just thinking about where is a good place between updating their passwords. So having good password management policy, maybe doing it every 6 months or every 2 or 3 months, making them refresh their password. Looking at your physical security. So when you go back into the office, looking at how you store files, maybe under lock and key, maybe even just the doorway, making sure that people can't get into the building unauthorized, unattended, making sure that all of those physical things, not just on the computer, but are your physical surroundings secure? You can make sure that you can also have a limit to who can access what. As I said, your employees are going to be your weakest link. So if I have access to HR information and I'm on the sales team, I don't need to know that. I don't need to know anyone's bank account details, where they live or anything. So you need to make sure that your employees have the right access management controls, so limit their privileges. Only the manager can see this kind of information, or only the CEO can see this kind of information, and limits it to what they need to know. Another thing you need to do is plan your response to a breach. If there is a breach, what are you going to do? Who do your employees inform? Where are the records kept if there is a breach, and how long do you need to respond? A lot of what Charlene was talking about, if you have a data breach that's done by a cyber attack, if it is of high risk to the data subject, you need to notify the ICO. So there is lots of not just technical things, but there are things that you need to do in terms of GDPR. How are you going to respond? Planning that response. Performing background checks. I know this sounds a bit like, yeah, of course we do. But as I said, insider threats can be a big problem. So you might need to have background checks when you are onboarding your staff, and also when you're offboarding, and just check and maybe monitor some social media sites. Classify your information and protect them. So what kind of information have you got? This is something that we can help you to do at Integrate, is to perform a data mapping service where we look at what kind of data you hold, where is it held, how is it protected, so that you have an overall picture of your data that could be accessed by cyber criminals, and so you have a really good overview of what information you have. Looking at, shredding data that's got sensitive data, making sure that you're checking that header information when you are looking at suspicious emails. Remember what I said, when you look at your emails on a phone, you're not always seeing that header information. So open it out in full and look at who the sender is, and you will see keys that are telling you that this is coming from a suspicious source. Okay, so I know I've said a lot, but there are also some technical things that you can consider. So firstly, antivirus. Antivirus is a software that you can put onto your devices that helps to protect you from virus attacks. Anti-malware is to use for more sophisticated attacks. So antivirus protects against kind of older types of malware, whereas the anti-malware protects against the more newer, sophisticated types of attacks. You need to make sure that you have a firewall, and what a firewall does is it inspects packets of information that are traveling into and out of your network, and it will stop packets of network information that is what it deems untrustworthy, and it's based on a set of rules. So you set up your firewall, and it would look for, okay, if this has got this kind of information on it, stop it, and then it will have a list of things that is stopped. It doesn't stop viruses though. So if you're going to have an anti virus, you're going to probably also need a firewall. Now, Windows Defender has the firewall and the anti-malware built into it. Okay, so look at what you already have. You may actually already have it, and you just need to switch it on. Encryption, where you can. Encryption is a way of taking data that is really easy for people to understand and read, and turning it into something that makes no sense, like gobbledygook. It just be a string of words and numbers and symbols. But encryption of data, if you are sending information, especially via email, you may want to look into making sure that the data that you're sending is encrypted. If you are using Office 365 or Gmail, it's actually really easy to do that. You can type on the top of your mail before you press send, you can press encrypt. And then what that will do is it will send your email, whatever data is within it, and it will encrypt it so that no one who's watching your network traffic can see it unless they have the encryption key. And then the person who receives it on the other end cannot get into it unless they have the password and the key. And it will come in 2 separate emails. So the email will come, and then a second email will come with the password to open up the first one. Really simple to set up, and it provides lots of protection. You can also encrypt your files, for example, your Word files or your PDFs. Turn on encryption when you are dealing with very, very sensitive data. You might want to think about your network design. Do you have a network where you have a guest account for people that are coming to your business, or if you've got a network? By running out of time, Yvonne.
No. You're fine.
No problem. So you might have a network where you've got a network account for guests and one for your staff, and one that's so you might want to look at your network design and making sure that it's designed in a way to limit access. Okay. Update your software regularly. I think we said that already. Making sure that you have secure Wi-Fi, and so that no one can just log into your Wi-Fi. Making sure that you can also have a look at web and email filtering. Now, there is a service called DMARC, or DMARC. Okay, DMARC. And what that does is you can sign up to those services and prevents unauthorized use of your email domain. So what that means is some cyber criminals can use your email, find your client base, and then send emails that look like they come from you to your clientele. So this will stop that fraudulent email being sent by using a system to stop it from being sent out in that way. There are also things that you can look at in terms of how do I know if there is a threat happening? Well, the police actually have a threat alert service, which you can sign up to. It's just called actionfraud.police.uk, and you can sign up and it will tell you what the latest threats are that are happening at the moment. Okay, so lastly, I think this is almost lastly, is you might want to think about the kind of policy things that you've got to put in place. So you need to think about your training awareness, because remember I said training your staff is going to be one of the biggest things to keep you secure. You're going to have to look at your data retention. Charlene said about keeping data for 7 years. If you have to keep data, how long are you keeping it? If you look in your email box, I'm sure you've got data from years and years and years ago for somebody that you shouldn't really have anymore. You can quickly just switch on a filtering to just say, look, filter out any emails after this amount of days, and then you can go into it and check and delete what you don't need to have. Look at your employee turnover, because obviously staff could pose an internal threat. Making sure that you have a mobile device management policy and a response to if there is a breach, if there is an incident, if there is a hacking, how are you going to deal with it? Okay. You might want to audit your security levels that you have now. You might want to audit your business in terms of the physical structure of it. You might want to audit your network. And this is a service that we do provide here at Integrate. But lastly, I wanted to pick up on these points because I'm aware that we're speaking to small businesses today. And these are things that you might want to think about. So if you do lose your data, you've got to think about how do you get it back. So you've got to make sure that you have a really robust backup system, whether you are backing it up in the cloud, how often are you backing it up so that you know, if there is a disaster, for example, your building's on fire, your house burns down, it's flooded, there's lots of flooding happening, anything could happen that loses that data, not just a cyber threat. How are you going to recover and get back up and running? Now, one thing you could check out is cybersecurity insurance. It does exist. It protects businesses against the liability of a breach. It may help with the financial costs of legal fees should you have to go to court. It can help with covering equipment damage and recovering equipment. So, for example, I'm not promoting them, but it does exist. Hiscox does provide cyber security insurance. I'm sure a lot of other businesses do as well. Last few points then, recovery time objective. So what that is how much time do you really need to bring your system back online? You need to think about if you do have a cyber threat that happens that stops your systems from working, you have a ransomware attack and they're holding onto your data, how much time do you really need to back it up? And that's really to look at your backup. Have you got a capture of the last hour of your business, or do you have a capture of the last day of your data that you've collected in your business? The recovery point objective is similar to that, but it's actually how much data can you afford to lose since your last backup. So, for example, if you can stand to lose about 2 hours worth of data without having a big impact on your business, then your RPO or recovery point objective is 2 hours. So that means you then set your backup to be happening every 2 hours, a snapshot of your network, your data on your system every 2 hours. Lastly, I would say a really important thing to do is to rehearse, plan. If you are plan and train your staff or train yourself on what you might do. Imagine you had a cyber incident. What are you going to do? And try and work it out. So I have summarized these into 10 key points, just in case you wanted to take a snapshot. So really beware, classify and protect your information, use antivirus and anti-malware, update any kind of software that you have regularly. These are my top practical tips. Don't leave any sensitive data unguarded if you're dealing with physical data. Have a strong password protection system, so making sure that you are not using 123 or QWERTY. Safeguard your mobile devices and your remote devices. Train your employees and plan your response to a breach and have a backup. I think these are, if you can get these 10 things down, there are always going to be instances where you're not going to be able to protect everything, but if you do as much as you can, it will put you in a really good place. So I'm going to leave it there with just a real quick kind of plug, a shameless plug, sorry, Yvonne, of Integrate. So we work with lots of small businesses, CICs, small businesses around Lambeth and beyond. We do data protection officer as a service. That's what I do. I am a data protection officer for a couple of our clients that we have. We do help to look at incident management. We can provide audits and come and audit businesses. And we have done quite a few cyber security training. So we've been doing lots of training online through the lockdown. And before the lockdown, we were going into businesses and delivering training for staff. So if you would like to get in contact, you can contact me. That's quite impersonal, isn't it? Contact at Integrate. It's nicola.harris@integrateagency.co.uk if you would like to get in contact with me. And I think I'm done.
Thank you, Nicola. That was quite amazing, as I knew it would be. Very informative. We have some time for questions. I think there's a question for Charlene. And Becky, would you like to ask it? I think Becky had a question. Can she be allowed to speak? Olivia, where are you?
Still here, unless Becky has a different handle name.
All right, Charlene. There was a question from Becky. Where is it? About are all the or is it from somebody? One of you mentioned about security in train stations and airports, and it was whether or not they're all safe and secure.
Yeah, I think that might be for me. And in Becky, I would say that be very, very careful when you are trying to attach to Wi-Fi in those particular environments. I would say the safest thing to do is use your data. Use your data allowance on your phone and not connect to the Wi-Fi, because that's quite a nice hotspot for cyber criminals to present a fake portal for you to attach to.
Right. Charlene, is there anything you'd like to add in relation to GDPR and security and in your services in terms of what you offer?
I think what Nicola said was it was a really important point on the cyber aspect. I think from an employment aspect, if you are running your own business, you might want to think about additional systems and services that could be on your phone at the same time. So I usually have things like Bitdefender and things like that kind of spoof my processing, but you just never know, do you? So it's always better to be safe than sorry, because the worst thing, the consequences and the kind of potential pitfalls of not doing this properly are quite severe. And it only takes one incident for it to become viral these days, right? Social media is the court of public opinion, and things end up out there all the time. And so, you know, if you are a business owner, as an example, your brand and reputation is everything. And so you've got to take that seriously. I mean, my laptop, I'm probably sharing too much information, especially being on YouTube, but I've got like fingerprint access, facial recognition, and then I have all the additional security stuff, because I was just like, nope, I am not getting myself into hassle with this.
That's really good. Really good. That's a good example.
Yeah, and I think what you shared about insurance was interesting, because I don't think I knew that. But if your business really depends on the internet, if it's an online business especially, you really need to have that insurance, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Go on, Nicola.
No, I was just saying that I think it's something to consider if I mean, Charlene will say that in the UK GDPR, they still haven't really kind of snapped down on those fines yet, isn't it? But they said, what is it, 4% of your global annual turnover? So if you have a data breach that's due to any kind of like cyber attack, and if you can afford a 4% hit, then you know, but if you can't, then you need to think about the insurance.
Yeah, and I think the danger with that kind of the blanket statement around fines is there's no, when people tell me about fines and this is what the enforcement could go up to, I often ask questions, right? Well, what's your assessment process? How do you work that out? What are there categories of levels of breaches? You know, where is this program? Because you know, one of the other things is we talked about that I do is kind of inclusion, equality, equity. You know, where does bias creep in your processes? And the fact remains, if they don't have robust processes that can kind of deal with these things fairly, you could well be on the receiving end of a harsh fine in comparison with a big global organization, which isn't fair. I mean, it did say of your annual turnover, so depending on what that is, but we still don't know enough about the processes by which they undertake. And that point about insurance that you mentioned, Yvonne, is really important, because if you have public liability insurance, hardly ever does that include cybersecurity insurance. You have to have additional insurance to cover cyber. So, you know, when you're getting your insurance and you think you're covered, double check that includes cyber, because it's the very minimalist, an add-on. It's not kind of part of the initial insurance package.
That's really, really useful information. You mentioned, I think, Nicole, a system to stop fraudulent email. What were you referencing? Because I see so many, when I go into spam, there are so many people I know whose emails are in there with fraudulent emails.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm wondering if mine is doing the same.
Yeah, no, I get them as well. It says this person sent me an email, and these people I haven't emailed since 19 how long?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's called DMARC, DMARC, and it's basically a service that will help to stop unauthorized use of your email being used to send out to your client list, so your contacts.
Yes.
So definitely worth a look at that.
I will have a look, because so many people I know, when I go into spam, there's just all these and those emails from those people that are in spam, who are obviously fraudulent emails, are their emails in use now, or they're dead email accounts? I don't understand. How does this? Some of
them are definitely in use.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've had people email me and say, look, your emails, you've got a virus on your system. Right. So yeah. And I don't know about you, but I tend to have had the same email for the last 20 years or so. So at least, I don't want to show my age, you know I look young, but I've had this email address for a very long time. So
yeah, I find that one really interesting. I really do. But and it just makes me wonder if my email is being used in the same way. But for me, they always end up in spam. I don't really see these weird emails unless I go into spam. But so my spam filter must be quite good.
You can also have a look to see if your email has been involved in an attack by going to ihavebeenpawned.com.
Yes, I went into that. That was a shock. I did that. That was a shock to see. I think I was in the
LinkedIn, yeah,
and a few others. Yeah, I was like, what? Yeah, that was a shock. I think everyone should do that.
Definitely have a check. It doesn't. Yeah, it costs nothing to just check and then see what's happening.
Yeah. Olivia, have I been pawned? Thank you, Olivia, for posting that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from those people that are still left? Anything else? There's nothing in the chat.
Oh no, have I bored them all to tears?
No, I think you answered all of their questions.
Exactly. They were mesmerized. You've answered all the questions. No, it was really thorough, and you did, touch on all the points. Okay, well, I think it leads me to say, because we're nearly on the button with time anyway, so it leads me to say thank you to Nicola, thank you to Charlene, and it has been a wonderful evening. I'm really proud of our first event. Thank you to Olivia Joseph, my wing lady. Thank you to Tracy Durant, the brains behind all the techie stuff. And I just want to draw your attention to the global conversation for those in the room, participants, on the 20th of February. We're having a global conversation from people from around the world about the impact of COVID. So we've got people from Cameroon, some of my associates in Myanmar, where I've worked, people from Ghana, USA Virgin Islands, Nigeria, all over, who will be finding out what their experiences have been in relation to COVID in terms of loss and grief. So I'm looking forward to hosting that on the 20th, Sunday the 20th, Saturday or Sunday the 20th, the 20th anyway of this month. Thank you, Olivia. You've been a star. Thank you, Tracy, and to everybody, all our participants. Thank you very much for taking your time is valuable, and we really appreciate you joining us. Tell your friends and tell them next time they need to sign up and find out, because we have very knowledgeable people here, and I'm sure so many of us don't know what we don't know. So I'll leave you with that. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Later. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.